So I used to wonder if when people, with somebody with a disability, whether life was worth living with a disability. Like, for example, if you didn't have two good legs. I used to wonder things like that. Well, it was November of this past year, early November, and I had just woke up in my bed at South Lake Hospital, and had quite an eventful evening. And then there was an announcement on the intercom that this was November 11th, Remembrance Day. I hadn't realized that. And they said, let's take a moment now to remember the men and women who served our country, some who gave the ultimate sacrifice to protect our freedoms. And as I lay there, a memory came to me. I'll share that memory in a moment, but scroll back 3 weeks. It's early October now, this past year, and I've had a soreness in my left knee, and I kind of thought it was arthritis, which I've had flare up at times. So I had in my mind I was going to start taking glucosamine again. I had these exercises in mind, and I was ready to do that. And I wake up this Sunday morning, and my left foot, has the weirdest feeling. It's cold, really cold. I reach down and touch it. It feels like it was in the refrigerator, and it's numb and there's pulsing. And so I say to my wife Clara, Clara, there's something going on with my foot, and I'm going to go to Emerge right now, and I'll let you know how it goes. I can do it myself. It's Sunday morning, and I don't want to have to her get up, and I can get there. It's not far away. The hospital is just down the road from where we live. It's the same hospital where our daughter Tessa was born 18 years ago, where my mother passed away 8 years before. So I go to the Emerge, and I get in there, and I get in a wheelchair because my foot is hurting like hell. And it's lucky because, they talk about crowded emergency wards, but it's early on a Sunday morning, and thank God it's not crowded. And they wheel me in quite quickly, and I tell them what's happening. And they check my foot, and they can feel how cold it is. And then they get a stethoscope, and they said, there's no pulse in your foot. And they seem to be quite concerned. So now I'm concerned as well. And they said, we're going to have to check you in, and this is pretty serious. So I call up Clara, I tell her what's happening, and she comes, and they do check me in the hospital. And things move quickly. They get me into an MRI, and they discover that I have blood clots in my lower left leg. And they don't know why, and they still don't know why, but it's quite serious. There's no circulation in my leg. And so that very night, this is how serious it was, they arranged for surgery that night. So I go into surgery, and I won't go into too many details, but it's called a thrombectomy, and they kind of put balloons in your arteries to see if they can, get rid of the clots. Well, the next morning, the surgeon comes in, and they talk to myself and my wife, and they tell us how it went. And they said they did as much as they could, but there were still a lot of clots in my foot, and they weren't sure what they were going to do, but I'm going to have to stay there, and they're going to have to watch and see how it goes. And I'm not sure what that means. Like, what else can they do? Because they tried their best to get rid of the clots. And so I'm in quite a bit of pain now from the surgery and from just the clots, I guess. And so now I've got the little clicker, and I'm getting regular doses of morphine or whatever it is, hydromorphone, I guess. And at this time, I had a roommate. I shared a room with a hockey coach. His name was Stan, and I would overhear his conversations, and it was kind of comforting because I sometimes listen to sports radio, and listening to him coach on the phone sometimes was just kind of comforting to hear him do that. But he would often say to his friends and to the nurses that he felt like he was in the Hotel California. You can check out, but you can never leave. And I got the sense I kind of felt the same way. I felt like I was kind of in a bad dream, a bit of a nightmare, because They told me they were going to look at the foot and see what happened, but it was kind of like waiting for Godot because it wasn't getting any better. It didn't look good. And every couple days or every once in a while they put a Doppler on it to see if there was any kind of pulse. And every once in a while they say, oh yeah, there's a bit of pulse there, but not too often. And it took them a while to say the word amputate. I don't like that word. I don't know about anyone else. It's so severe. It's like execute, terminate, asphyxiate, all those words, amputate. But they finally said it, and initially they talked about, well, maybe we might only have to take off like part of your foot. And so we asked them about that. Okay, if they do that, does that mean that's all it is going to go? And then they said, well, we're not sure. If we do that, later on we might have to come back and take a little bit more. And it kind of reminded me of the Black Knight in that Monty Python skit, gets chopped away bit by bit. I didn't want that. I wanted to get it one and done. So we asked the surgeon, is it possible? How much of the leg can you save? And she said, well, it looks like we can save about half down to the shin. And if we do that, we think you'll do all right. And so we decide that's what we're going to do. And right about that time, I wrote a letter to my leg, and I shared it with my family and friends. I texted it out, and I thanked my left leg for all the joys it had given me, running with my father, skiing, playing football. I knew I was going to miss it, but I thanked it because it had served me well. And then my leg was really hurting a lot. They were giving me a certain amount of medication, and they only give you so much. And it was getting to the point where what they was giving me wasn't enough. So finally, it was like November 10th, and I said to the surgeon, I called her, I said, look, it's really, really hurting. I'm ready. Okay, she said. She was she was a wonderful woman. And so they arranged it for that evening. So they brought me into the pre-op room. They gave me a document to read, and I read it, and it said, I'm paraphrasing, but basically it said, I, Tim Greenwood, acknowledge that my left leg will be amputated. They wanted to make sure they got the right one, which the right one was the left one. But they wanted to do that so that I knew that they knew. And, it wasn't going to get screwed up. But I had to actually say it out loud to acknowledge that I was ready for this step to be taken. So they put me into anesthetic, and that was, my family was waiting to see if what happened, but it went quite late. And it was November 11th when I woke up. And I realized that I was lighter. I could feel that I was lighter now. And then the announcement came over the intercom that it was November 11th, Remembrance Day. And then I remembered something that I hadn't before. My grandfather, Major Eric Greenwood, he was an amputee. You see, he had graduated from RMC as an officer, joined the Royal Engineers, and he was in the front line in France, digging the trenches with the Royal Engineers when German machine gun fire shattered his leg, and it was amputated. And I knew my grandfather well. We called him Pom Pom. He lived with us for a while, and he married the nurse that brought him back to health. And as I thought of him, I thought, my grandfather did it. From the age of 24 to 86, he lived with a prosthetic leg, and he lived quite a memorable and full life. And I'm a Greenwood too. We come from the same family tree. So I thought, if my grandfather can do it, I can do it too. And to answer the question I asked at the beginning of myself, is life worth living with a disability, like with one leg? I'll say, yes, it certainly is. Most of the time. Thank you.